Hey guys, Dustin Wynn.
Hey, this is Scott Snyder.
This is Paul Dini.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
And you're listening to Bat Force Radio.
You're listening to Bat Force Radio.
This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman, and you're listening to Bat Force Radio, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to Bat Force Radio. Thank you for spending your time with us again rather than taking out the garbage or doing something responsible. But we have Bat Force Tom in California.
Hey.
And I am Robin Cross in Canada. Today's guest is a writer, illustrator, and multiple Eisner winner, known around the comics world for works like Invisible Kingdom, Bloodstained Teeth, Odyssey, Thor, Black Bolt, and Aquaman Andromeda, while working with co-creators like Matt Fraction, Ram V, G. Willow Wilson, and Jason Aaron, among many others. He has two big new things on the horizon that I am super interested in. One of them is Spectregraph alongside James Tynion, coming in 2024, which you can currently see a preview of in the pages of The Devil's Cut, the debut publication sampler from new publisher DSTLRY, which has an insane roster of top-level talent, so check that out. The other thing on that horizon is Batman City of Madness, a 3-issue cosmic horror epic on DC Black Label, written by Christian Ward, illustrated by Christian Ward, with main covers by Christian Ward. And joining us here today, conveniently enough, is Christian Ward.
Christian Ward is very, very tired right now.
Well, we appreciate you being here. Yeah, the time difference, it's getting late in your day. And yeah, with pulling all those, that at least triple duty, maybe quadruple duty.
Yeah, I'm working twice as hard as anyone else.
At least. But we appreciate you taking the time to do this. How's life been?
Well, mate, I mean, come on. I'm living the dream.
Yeah,
I'm living
Batman, right?
the dream. You know, I mean, I think every comic book creator, wants to do a Batman story. I think everybody pitches a Batman story. So to be so fortunate and lucky to have had mine greenlit and I'm now doing it, and the response to it has been, it's not even out yet, and the response has been incredible. So I'm literally living my dream right now. So I'm very happy.
Yeah, and particularly for someone like yourself who has a sort of the backstory with comic, your own personal comic fandom that you do. And to that point, we like to begin with a new guest for the first time with their origin story. So what was like that first thing that you ever saw that made you think, first off, before even getting to comics, was there something that made you think that you just wanted to create art?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all ties back to my dad. My dad used to work shifts in a factory when we were growing up, so we wouldn't see him a lot of the time. He'd often be working for the night, sleeping through the day, and so there'd be weeks where we wouldn't see him. And the way that he would, kind of show his kind of love that, we were still in his thoughts, or particularly I was still in his thoughts, is he would, on the way home from work, he would pick up a newspaper that he would read before he went to bed, but he'd also pick up a comic from the newsagents. And so I would wake up, and on my bedside table, waiting for me, would be a comic. And it would be a disparate issue, it would be mid-run, last issue of the run, it would be just a random book. He would like the cover, he'd pick it up, and it could be anything, and it could be Spider-Man, the Hulk, it could be, anything, but more often than not, it'd be Batman. And so, like, as I was learning to read, and even before I was learning to read, I was consuming these kind of incredible stories, and they kind of, like many comic creators and many people, I'm sure I'm speaking something that you guys understand, it just sort of like flicked a switch in my head, and I just fell in love with the medium and just this strange thing where the words and the art combine and it kind of takes you somewhere. And it was really love at first sight. And so even before I even hit 10, I was kind of drawing my own comics and selling them in the playground. I used to photocopy them at my mum's work, and I'd take these little photocopied sheets, like one pages, and kind of try and sell them for 5p on the playground to try and make some, money for the ice cream man and all that. So I was an entrepreneur even at a young age.
We're going to cut that part out before DC hears it and cancels your whole book here.
They were like, we could have got him for 5p a page. So I, it's something that I've always loved, and growing up as a kid in the 80s, it was very quick. I'd get the UK Transformers comic, which was huge here. And I'd have that delivered every Saturday morning. You'd be waiting for the post boy to come and bring it, and just like, it was that like wanting to find out what happened next. That was the thing that really stuck with me. I want to know what happens next, and for me, that's always been what great comics have been about. I want to know what happens next, and that hunger for that. So it's a seed that was planted at a very early age, and it kind of grew and grew and grew. And then really it was when I was 13, when my love for Batman was really, really kind of there. The year before, I'd seen Batman 89 at the cinema, and we were just like, was the best film I'd ever seen. And I think from that point on, I don't think even now I've watched a film more than that, because of the amount of times I watched it on VHS. I mean, it was every other day.
Amen.
And so, yeah, I mean, like, it's not a perfect film, but my God, it's a magical film.
It's perfect.
But Batman Returns is maybe slightly more perfect. I mean, like, growing up, it became a thing that's, but it was that first one that really just like ignited that love of just like this character. And then my parents bought me Arkham Asylum, Batman Arkham Asylum, Sears House on the Sears Earth, and I was 13.
Oof.
And my God, reading this, I mean, I read The Killing Joke when I was about 10. So, I mean, what can I say? They were comics. They're for kids. They didn't even look in them. But I remember just going from pen and ink illustrations to what McKean did in the book with Grant Morrison was just incredible. Just how Dave McKean uses photography, paint, a collage, often always on the same page in different panels, and scratchy pencils, and it was just these levels of reality that I'd never really experienced before, and it was a revelation. And it obviously at 13, I perhaps didn't quite understand why I loved it so much, and as I got older, I appreciated it more and understood why I appreciated it more. But just then, the thing that I really loved, I just thought it was. Can I swear? Can I swear on this?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just thought it was fucking cool. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, this is fucking cool. It blew my mind. I remember taking it I went for Christmas on Christmas Day to my cousins, spending Christmas together. And my cousin Emmett wasn't a big comic fan. Well, he isn't a comic fan. He was never a comic fan. And I remember showing him and just like wanting to. It was like there must have been a part of my brain that was just like, if any comic can convince my cousin that comics are cool, this will be the one.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because it was just wow. You've never seen anything like it. And to this day, I mean, I read that book and I flick through that book more than anything. It's become my Batman 89. It's the VHS that I keep putting back into the machine. I just constantly, go back to it because it's just such an inspiring achievement. What it is, it's just so bold and just so unusual, and it shouldn't have worked really, but it absolutely did.
Yeah, it came out at a perfect time for it. And it's funny how even to this day, I don't know if there's a better example of something to show to a person
Yeah.
as far as quote superhero comics go, to show to someone who thinks that comics are for kids, and
100%.
what better examples are there than Arkham Asylum, and not just the subject matter that Mad Hatter was kind of played up as a pedophile rather than just a regular villain, but that is not some children's art.
No.
in that
No.
story.
No, it's a feast. It's a feast, just and I mean, I kind of like I find it hard to kind of imagine what that did to my brain as a child. The effect it had. I mean, it's akin to. I mean, I've never done drugs. I mean, I know a lot of people that look at my work probably would go, he's lying." But honestly, never done drugs. But like I think that book was like a drug to my mind. It just did something to it. And I don't think there's many books from that period that I can kind of go back to and still feel that amount of power. I mean, I love Dark Knight Returns. It's a classic. I love Batman Year One. It's a classic. But I don't go back to them anywhere near as much. I look at them, I go, yeah, that's cool. Like, I appreciate that they're classics and they're incredibly well made, and I get that, but they don't have the power that that book has for me. It's really special.
So once you got exposed to things like this and art started getting its hooks into you, where did you go from there? Was there art school in your future or anything like that?
It was a long journey. I mean, it was kind of like, it's weird. I talk to a lot of creators, and I like to give people advice. And if people come to me and ask me for advice, I will always give it and give people my time. And I think the thing that I always say is just be patient, but be persistent. And those two things will get you pretty much whatever your ambitions are. If you've got those two things, they will pretty much get you to that ambition in an amount of time. Because I always wanted to be a comic book artist, and my teacher at the time dissuaded me.
Not a
And
surprise.
yeah, and it's I come from a place called Wolverhampton, which is a very small. Well, it's not that small. It's like a kind of industrial town in the middle of the UK.
You've got the Wanderers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So really, the idea of being a comic book artist in Wolverhampton was akin to me. It's exactly the same as me going, "Oh, I'm going to be a movie star," or "I'm going to be a rock star." It's no different. It's just as unlikely as those two things. But I was very pragmatic, and so what I did was I was like, okay, but that's what I want to do, but I can't do that. So what's the next best thing? And I kind of discovered that illustration was a thing that I could do, and I could do that at the university in Wolverhampton, and that could be something I could make a living at, and that's close enough. So I went to university to do illustration, and I kind of like specialized for the most part in children's book illustration, and almost became one. I was like a hair's breadth away from getting a book published. Thank God it didn't, because I don't know, I could be somewhere completely different now. And obviously it didn't. And then I moved to London chasing fame and fortune, because that's what you did as an illustrator. And this is kind of pre-internet. So really, to get a job as an artist, it was you would drop off your portfolios at these big publishing houses, and then you would come back at the end of a Friday to pick it up. And then that's, the art directors would look at your portfolio, be like, yes, no, whatever. And it never worked. I never got a call back. I never got a job. So I kind of evolved. I got a day job working at Hamley's toy store, where I was dressing up as a teddy bear, 6-foot teddy bear. You can't make this shit up. It's true.
And funny that these days you could also still be called a bear.
Yeah, absolutely. I might be happily married with my wife, but I will embrace that 100%. 100%. Yeah, no. I basically I was like, okay, I'm doing this day job where I'm kind of like selling teddy bears dressed up as a bear, etc., etc. And so what I did to kind of feed my artistic soul, like, is I became a fine artist, and I would find kind of galleries in London and kind of like cool bars, and I would put on exhibitions of kind of like large canvases. They always had a a kind of narrative. All the paintings, they were quite strange and abstracted, but there was always a story going on. So there was always that in my brain, as wanting to be a storyteller, wanting to tell stories. And that was probably the most successful thing I did. I had a few good shows. I made a little bit of money, but nothing I could live off. And eventually, I got bored of working in retail and became a school teacher, and surprised myself by loving it. And I did that for 10 years. And I would say for the first five, I adored the job. Really, really loved teaching young people. And I kind of ascended very quickly. So within a year, I was head of my department, and I was running the whole art department. And I had a real passion for it. Um, but I was working in the East End of London, and in quite a mixed community. Some of it was very poor, some of it was quite affluent, but lots of it was very disengaged. And what I would use, and particularly the boys, and what I found very quickly is the thing that would, because I was the head of department that I replaced was kind of older than myself, and so when I came in as a kind of a younger man, it was quite surprising to a lot of these lads. They're like, oh, this is interesting. He's kind of like, I mean, I was still obviously 20, 30 years older than them, but to them I was a bit closer. And I started using comics as a way of hiding the learning, because with comics you've got to be able to draw, life drawing. You've got to be able to do composition. You've got to be able to do um, lots of different kind of like skills that can be hidden within the kind of parameters of comic books. And so I would use them as a way of kind of as a teaching tool. Um, and then just basically one day I had a kind of snotty-nosed kid who was just like, ugh. And he got one of my worksheets, which were these comic books, but telling you what the kids had to do to learn that day. And he was just like, if you're so good at this, why don't you do it? And it was like that little spark that was just like, so my whole career now is based on spite for that one kid. I'll show you. And I started posting. It occurred to me, like, what would my comic art look like now? Because back when I was a teenager, it looked like it jumped from looking like kind of like bad Jim Lee knockoffs to like kind of bad Dave McKean knockoffs. And then I was like, well, what, now that I've gone on this journey for the last literally like 20 years, and I've, absorbed all this other art and absorbed all this kind of like contemporary illustration and all this other stuff that has nothing to do with comics, what will my comics look like? And so I started doing comics just out of kind of like curiosity again. I never stopped buying them. It was always something I loved.
Yeah.
And I posted up on the Bendis board, because the internet started to happen. God, I make myself sound really old here. And Fire had just been created, and somebody came in with this thing called Wheel. And I posted.
And I told him it'll never last.
It won't last. I shall then. And yeah, so I posted it on the Bendis board. And I became quite friendly with a guy called Scott Wegener. Now, Scott he's a comic book artist, and he's still working today, and he's still drawing the same book today that he was doing then. It's incredible. And it's got Atomic Robo. I don't know if you guys have ever read it. Any readers out there, it's like listeners, Atomic Robo is fantastic. It's one of the best indie books you could get. I mean, it's to sum it up, it's basically Indiana Jones-esque, but with a robot. It's great. It's such fun. It's really, really good. And he's such a great like cartoonist, comic book artist. And it was written by Brian. I forget his surname. Sorry, Brian. But anyway, they invited me. They launched their book, and they invited me to do. They'd seen some of my art on the forum, and I did chat to Scott, and he invited me. Well, why don't you do? We need some backups. And it wasn't paid or anything like that. It was just for free. You can do a backup strip. It's 5 pages, and I sort of said, can I write it? And there you go. Yeah, I said, can I write it? He said, yeah, go for it. And so I wrote this 5-page comic, and obviously I was working full time, so I would go to work, teach, work with my colleagues, plan what the curriculum was, do the marking, do all the stuff that's involved in teaching, and I would come home absolutely exhausted and drained, as any teacher would tell you you are at the end of the day, and then I'd start making comics for the first time in a long time. And God, it took me, it was 5 pages, but it must have taken me 3 months at least to do these 5 pages, just to find that ounce of energy at the end of the day, but also just I was finding my way again, and you can find those pages online. I've posted them on Twitter and stuff. It's like I threw everything at them, just trying to find what my work looked like. But it kind of it did something, because from that I got my first image book within the space of a year. I mean, that's incredible to and I don't think I kind of realized that back then, what a big deal that was. But I got it within the space of a year. I got this image book. Didn't make very much money. I mean, I think um I think if I made $1,000 for the 4 issues, I'd probably be, I would have been lucky. I mean, certainly wasn't much more than that, but I just loved doing it. So I did this book called Olympus, which I never talk about because it's awful and I don't like the writer.
Oh.
You don't need to cut that out. Keep that in. Did that, and then that I met a guy called, you'll know this guy, called Nick Spencer. We
Yeah.
came up at the same time, and then we did a book together called Infinite Vacation. And again, I was working full time, doing this book, doing comics, at night, being really tired. It's funny. And then I'd met my now wife, and we lived, or I lived in a very small studio apartment in South London. My desk was here, and the bed was like, I could reach my arm out and touch the bed. And so she would go to bed. She'd had headphones on, eye patches, and I'd work through the night while she kind of like softly snored next to me. And we did that for years, while I was doing these books. And again, Infinite Vacation, didn't really make me a lot of money. It did a little bit better than Olympus, and it was also a bit better reviewed. And I suddenly seemed to find there was a kind of growing fan base. I was like, oh, I've kind of got some fans. And then from that, I got chatting to Matt Faction online, and we hit it off. And Matt loved my work. Obviously, I love Matt's work. And he was just like, do you want to do a book together? And I think I fainted, because I was like, wow. And then suddenly I was hit with this decision. Like Matt was able, like anyone that knows kind of like, the ins and outs of Image don't pay a page rate. They don't work like that because you own the book. But because of Matt's name being attached to the book, and he'd just done Sex Criminals and he'd just done Hawkeye, so he was hot shit then. We were able to secure, and they knew my situation. They were able to secure and I was very fortunate, and I knew it. It wasn't a big advance, but it was enough of an advance to go, I can quit the day job. And I suddenly had this decision. Actually, I kind of love teaching, but I've always wanted to do this. But it was like that. It was that step of, in teaching. I'd had about 4 years of being very poor in London. And anyone who's grown up in, been in the city knows what that sort of, is like, eating baked beans and for dinner, wanting to buy a CD and think, and deliberating for months, can I afford it? And one of the things I really liked about teaching was I'd never had a job before where I was just like, oh, I've got money. I don't have to worry. So it was the leap of faith to kind of like, okay, I'm going to bet on myself and do comics, but I'm going to, the guaranteed income is gone. I'm going to say
Yeah.
goodbye to that. But it was just, I met my now wife. She was very supportive, thought that I should do it. We didn't have children at the time, so there was no real commitments. So I went for it. And really, the rest is history. Me and Matt did Odyssey. That kind of led to me doing Black Bolt at Marvel, which led to me getting my first Eisner. Then I did Infinite, and then I did Invisible Kingdom, as you mentioned earlier, with G. Weller Wilson. That got me my second two Eisners. And then working with Ram V at DC on Aquaman, working with Jason Aaron on Thor at Marvel. I mean, it's incredible, really, and that's led me right up to now. I mean, particularly kind of I finished Aquaman, and Chris Conroy, the group editor, was what's next, and what's this Batman thing I keep seeing you tweet about?
Yeah, now so it's a couple things there. So as far as taking that risk, we always hear the stories of the people who took the leap and it worked, but the risk is because you don't hear all the stories of the people who made that leap, took that risk, and it didn't pay off.
Yeah.
So luckily for us, as well as yourself, that it did work out on yours. And yeah, as far as taking us up to the time of Aquaman, when I saw you announced as doing a DC book with Ram, I thought, okay, this is great, because I tell people, working in a comic shop, I get to tell people my opinions on comic books ad nauseum. They can't do anything about it unless they want to leave. But I tell people that you're the type of illustrator that they want making the comics that they're reading, because a style like yours, for a long, things have been changing recently. It's been improving for a while now, but for a while at DC, a lot of things just looked the same. And I would see new books announced. They would announce this new, a Justice League or Justice League, character title, and it would be, one of the same few artists that are on, it felt like, every other Justice League adjacent book.
Yeah.
And everything was sort of having that same flavor. But then, all the other stuff that I was reading at indie publishers was artists like yourself who looked different. It was something great and something that looked outside of just what everyone was used to getting. So when you were coming on to finally do this thing at DC with especially with someone like Ram, that was fantastic. And yeah, the Andromeda was great. For anyone watching the video, I just had a couple images up on the screen. And yeah, that takes us now up to, they did ask what was next and what was this Batman idea, because yeah, you were talking about this Batman book was something that you had wanted to do for a long time, right?
Years, absolute years. Yeah, I mean, it was born from Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
It's kind of a. I mean, you've read it, you know. It's a pseudo sequel, which becomes more and more apparent as the issues go on. And I kind of, there was. I did that because it's. I wanted to thank that book for existing, because if it wasn't for that book, I wasn't sure I'd be a comic book artist, and I wanted to create something that was a real hymn to the book and to Batman as a whole. So I always had that little nugget, like what would my, and I always put pseudo in there because I don't feel like I can be like, oh, it's the sequel. Do you know what I mean? It's a spiritual sequel. It's a love letter sequel. It's only Grant and Dave can do the sequel, the real sequel. This is my love letter.
Similar to how Three Jokers is sort of a sequel to Killing Joke.
Yeah. Exactly. So, fans of Arkham, when you read this book, my book, you're gonna dig it. But I did an illustration. I had this image of this version of Batman, And anyone who follows me on Twitter will have seen it. And it's the kind of Cthulhu-like Batman. And I posted it. Years ago. I mean, I think the earliest time I can find it is February 2021 was the very first time I posted it. So long before I started Aquaman. This is like long before I did any work at DC. And it was, I'd never done any work at DC. And so part of it was me putting a flag in the ground and just, I don't know whether I want to say it's magical thinking, wanting to manifest, because I think that undermines when real work and real effort and real insight and just trying to be nimble, which is what I was trying to be. So I kind of put it out there, and it blew up. I was like, okay, this is something. And every now and again, I'd retweet it. I'd let 6 months go past, and I'd retweet it again, and it would blow up again. And I'd be like, this is insane. It's like every time I post it, it gets bigger. It grows and grows and grows. And I just kept doing that over the years. Repost, repost, repost. Every time people got excited. And so we finished Aquaman. And I got on really well working with Chris Conroy, who's the group editor, and a gentleman called Matthew Levine, who's who's like the direct editor. So he was the main editor, and then Chris was like overseeing and doing all that. And we got on really well. And Chris said to me, "What's next? And what's this Batman you keep tweeting? Is there a story?" And there was, and that's the thing that was really cool about it. There was always this story that I had, what it would be. So probably within an hour or two, I was able to kind of put that story down on like kind of a PDF, send it, and it was officially pitched. And it was greenlit within a month. And it was unbelievable. So I finished Aquaman in October. Pitched it officially like at the tail end of October, kind of early November, and then I was doing it. It was wild, absolutely wild, and I've been doing it ever since. And that's the other thing that's really lovely. I am putting everything into this, and it's been slow and methodical and laboured. I mean, normally when you're working on, like, for instance, like when I did Black Bolt, I was working to the point where I'd have to do pretty much an average of 5 to 6 pages a week to hit your deadlines. Excuse me, that's what you have to do. To put it in context, and these are oversized pages, I can have a week where I do 3 pages and I'm absolutely fine schedule-wise. I mean, I've just started working on issue 3, and issue 1 hasn't even had its FOC. That's the beauty of working on this so far in advance. It's touch wood, nothing happens to me. I don't like break my arm or anything. It's not going to be late, but also, most of all, it's not going to be rushed. And it's I'm having such a blast doing it.
Now, was your pitch process? Did it include? Was there any back and forth? Was there anything that you had to meet them halfway on? Anything like that?
No,
That's
it's
awesome.
I mean, honestly, it's literally been lots of this pinching myself. Because I can't really say, because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who's, and even for yourself beyond issue 1. There's some really bold things in here. I was like, they're never going to let me do this, and they have. But that's the beauty of Black Label, because it exists outside of, the mainstream, and the whole ethos of it is let artists go wild, and it's more akin to a create your own book.
Yeah.
It just happens to have Batman in it, but it's there's not been any. I've had no pushback at all. In fact, my editors have been just amazing, because it's all been about how can we make this better. So obviously, I'll send a script in, and I'll get notes back going, "Oh, this is great. This is great. Have you thought about maybe like kind of we need to clarify this a little bit? We need to like this bit, like good editors do. They've been working with me to make this the best thing I can make it. Me and Matthew, we've been having like Zoom calls, where I've like been telling him what I'm planning, and I'm like sort of talking to him like I am to you guys now, and I'm like, and then this is going to happen, and then we're going to have, and and I've been giddy, and I could see he's been giddy, and it's just they are literally letting me live out my dream. It's brilliant.
Yeah, that's beautiful that they didn't have anything to push back at you on. 'Cause even when it's the things outside of the flagship titles, we had a few weeks ago Clay and Seth Mann on here to talk about their still as yet unannounced book, but you may know something about what it is they're doing and what it's a part of. But even in that space, they had one big thing that editorial really wanted them to do that they found a way to work with it, a compromise. But the fact that you didn't have to compromise is great.
No, it's and I'm very lucky, and I know that. And the way I'm treating this book is, I mean, I love Batman, and I hope this isn't the last time I get to write or draw him and write and draw him. But if it is, I'm putting everything into this. Like, I'm not holding anything back. I'm doing it as to put my absolute best in it. So, when this comes out, if I never do Batman again, I can look at this in 20 years' time and be really proud of it, going, I did it.
Yeah, and you did something really cool that's very outside of the norm. When I first read it, and I did just a posted some quick thoughts on it. I think I said where Morrison and McKean meet Lovecraft and Cthulhu, Christian Ward begins Batman City of Madness, and that's what it feels like. You can feel that it comes from its home of Arkham Asylum, but adds this whole other dimension into it. And Tom, I just cut you off there.
Oh, I was just going to say that similar to what Robin is saying, seeing, getting to read the first issue and kind of putting thoughts together. The first thing I noticed is, and I don't want to spoil it, but I'll just say it generally, is because of some of the characters and some of the plot points, you could tell right away you're not bound to any kind of rules or any kind of canon or timeline, which is refreshing. Because as soon as I heard this is going to be your story, once you see those points, it's like, oh, he's doing whatever he wants. He's not having to, well, I have to do this because this happens and this happens, so I have to write this. It's like, oh no, this is how he wanted to do it from the beginning. This is who's in the story. This is how it's going to all pull together. And I'll be honest, I didn't expect so many kind of twists and layered subplots going on at the same time. But at the end of the issue, very clearly, you could start to piece together, oh, this is all going to come to a head somehow. And I think I might know how, but I'm interested to see how it continues on. So that was, as you say, you're putting all of it into it. Like, you can tell this is a very layered, very intricate story with many moving parts that are leading to a specific direction. And each thing that's happening, you're like, wait, what? Okay, that's cool. We'll see where that goes. Wait, what? Okay, that's cool. And then, towards the end, it's like, okay, this is kind of crazy. All right. That's very,
thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
One thing that it was kind of a joy to see and interesting to see is the concept of I guess, like, trauma and influence of trauma and evil. And was that something that you always knew would be a part of this?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, the way that I write, and all my books have done this, is I feel like you talked about layers, and for me, great storytelling, and whether this be prose, comics, film, or TV, is great when there are layers. So you have your entertainment layer, and that's got to be here, but that's got to be built on top of a foundation that means something, and that doesn't take away from the entertainment, because you don't want it to feel like, welcome to my TED talk. It's always got to be fun, and page turning, and hopefully that this is. But I knew, because Batman's all about trauma. Like, it's the core. It's all about trauma. I mean, for me, I've always seen Batman as Hamlet, a man that has had this great trauma happen to him, and now he's having to enact a revenge that is not going to heal him, and what that does to him. I mean, I basically, what I've just said could describe Hamlet or Batman. It's the
Yeah.
same thing. And so really, that's the key. That's the core of it. Trauma. And you look at, not every one of his villains, but a heck of a lot of them. Trauma is what has created them. Some sort of event that they've gone through. You've seen it recently. We've kind of, they've done this line of, one bad day. That one bad day is just about trauma. And so I really wanted to bring that to the forefront and kind of explore what that meant to the characters in Gotham, but also what it means to me. But in a fun and exciting, scary, cosmic horror way.
And some of those layers, like I was thinking of, we were calling them layers there. I was thinking of them as like, building blocks of, of, in this case, the Batman mythos. And
Yeah.
like some of the blocks that you've taken, it's the way that you've combined them. So we've got like this block over here that feels like very traditional Gotham thing that happens in Gotham, that this block feels like it could be year one. This block feels like it's Arkham Asylum. This block feels like Court of Owls, or maybe a metal-ish kind of thing. And the way that you're building this wall out of all of them is where it's really different too. That certain combination, and then on top of that, the way that it looks, because few superhero comics, unless you or a small handful of other people are doing it, most superhero comics don't look the way this one does. And you mentioned earlier when we talked about Batman 89, and then that you thought that Batman Returns was a bit better film. That I kept coming back to Batman Returns because of the color palette in this. Every time I see those pinks, I kind of think of Batman Returns. That's kind of associated with that. The Catwoman's lighting and everything.
Yeah.
And that color palette, and most people wouldn't use it because it doesn't work in their stories. But your story and your style, this is how it has to be, I feel.
I mean, the colors, my colors, anyone who knows me, my colors have always been quite idiosyncratic and just, bold. And, there's no point me doing Batman and not bringing that to it, because I want to see what my Batman looks like. And I'm sure the people that have followed me that might not be Batman fans or might be Batman fans would want to see what my Batman looks like. And I think, there's a history of color in Batman. I mean, as much as they don't really work, I mean, the Schumacher films have some incredible imagery, very colorful. They don't work for me 100%. But look at the Bruce Timm, Batman animated series. I mean, more often than not, the sky was red. When's the night sky red? I mean, and we will see that a lot in this. That's my little nod. I'll often do the red sky at night as a little tip of the hat to Bruce Timm, because you can't have a conversation about the pillars of Batman without talking about Bruce Timm.
Yeah. And if you go back to Killing Joke, that was
oh my
an
God,
example of John Higgins colors in that, but you can tell how out of place it felt for some people, because when Brian Boland recolored it for, I think it was the 15th anniversary edition, he went back to the what you would expect a Batman book to look like.
Also Batman the Cult. Incredible trippy colors. Incredible.
Yeah, I think, Tom, we didn't we do an episode on the Cult?
We just
a while
did
back?
one.
Yeah. Thought so. And definitely a home for those colors. And yet, to your point of wanting to see what your Batman looked like, if I started seeing the preview pages for this book and it didn't look like your art, I would have been disappointed.
Exactly. You get one shot, you take it.
And I've been asleep at the wheel here a bit, but while we've been discussing this, I should have been bringing all of these up here. So we've got the A cover here, which is obviously by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The B cover for issue 1.
Oh,
Mhm.
oh,
Yeah, that
So
was
good.
awesome.
Yeah.
so cool,
Obviously, to anyone seeing, that is Bill Sienkiewicz,
incredible.
as synonymous with Batman as any other artist is.
That's got to
And
be
then-
awesome to see that, him doing a variant for your book.
Oh, and he just, his variant for issue 2, just incredible. I mean, I think it's out there now. It's just, oh my God. And the thing that really blew my mind was, obviously Batman's Batman. He's not my Batman, but Batman below, the kind of Cthulhu Batman,
Yeah.
he's mine. I created him.
Mhm.
I designed him. I drew him. And so Bill Sienkiewicz drawing a character that I created. Of course,
Yeah.
he's a version of Batman, but it's still my thing.
Mhm.
Wow, what an honor.
Mhm.
And then you've got another one of my favorites here, Mr. Martin Simmons.
Oh, yeah.
Me and Martin go way back, so
Yeah.
I had to have Martin.
Yeah. And then you did another special cover as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
And this
awesome.
one's this one's really special because actually this one, for anyone who doesn't know, this one's a reworking of the image that started it all. So this is a version of there you go, of the one I tweeted countless times, willing it into existence. So that had to be on a cover somewhere.
Mhm.
And for anyone who has read, I don't know what it is about this image, but this one that just feels like Arkham Asylum here, Obviously it's just a cityscape shot, but something about that, it has that feeling.
Thank you.
It looks like a photograph, like an action shot with motion. The way that you got Batman in the foreground, and then you got the motion of the bird or the bats, and then the city in the background. I love it, just the way it's multiple things happening. It looks like a snapshot from a camera. It's perfect.
Thank you.
And there's that pink in there, just like Catwoman's light.
And here you go. This is a little Easter egg. You can't quite see it, but the neon sign that he's running past. If you flip it, it says Axis.
Awesome.
So it's from '89.
Nice.
Axis Chemical
Very
Rooftop.
cool.
Shout out
That's
to our good friend, oh my gosh, Carl Newman, who was the
Carl
movement
Newman.
double that is in the suit in that shot.
Oh,
Do you know who Carl Newman is?
No.
Yeah. So he was he was originally a ballet dancer, right, and a lot of things like that. And he was hired by Tim Burton. So a lot of the iconic scenes in Batman '89. So right at the beginning there, when you see Batman's lower down with the cape spread wide open, that's Carl. When you see Batman hop into the car after saving Vicky Vale, that's Carl hopping in there. A lot of those scenes.
So cool.
Yeah.
When Joker's on the air horn and he's standing and he turns and his cape is flapping right next to the Batmobile and he's looking up at the helicopter. That's Carl.
Yeah. Oh wow!
Yeah, the iconic shot at the end where he's standing there and you see the bat signal shining in the sky. That's Carl again. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and there are so many. There are so many of the images, like even the promo images for the movie. You'll see magazines that have a promo photo or something from the movie, and say Michael Keaton in Batman '89. That's actually Carl Newman, Batman '89.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Wild. That's absolutely wild.
And he's become pretty active on social media over the last couple of years too, and so it's fun to follow him, see his point of view on things like that, and hear his experiences. And
I bet.
He went back recently to visit the place that stood in for Wayne Manor in the movie. So photos of him now in the rooms that you see in the movie is very cool.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
Back to this here. We've got your Two-Face here.
Oh, I love Two-Face.
Yeah.
Oh.
And this is a very different take on. So on your Two-Face, the bad side of Harvey is drawn very surreally. It's not you've got the realistic side on the good side, and everything in the room matches. But then, what was the idea?
The thing is, I love comics, and I think kind of what I love about comics is you can do things that you can't do in film, TV. You just can't. And so I really wanted to kind of take advantage of that and use a kind of different language, a visual language, to kind of illustrate what's going on in a very kind of clear and like straight way. So there was this idea, I had this idea that I wanted to draw the bad side of Harvey badly. So it was kind of like almost like a child's angry drawing. And it was kind of inspired by Basquiat, the artist. Um, I wanted these kind of very strange, kind of angry, and when I do it, I'm very like, very like drawing it with scratching and almost like it's, distressed. So that's what that's about, that idea of, and I'm treading carefully because you guys have read it, but, I wanted this sense of another
Yeah.
thing there.
Yeah.
And obviously, and then being able to go to town and kind of almost like he's the backgrounds. It's kind of like Francis Bacon, lots of distressed paint and just like quite nightmarish. I like the idea that, in my mind, Harvey was a good guy, that something terrible happened to him.
Mhm.
And I've never liked the take that he's this villain,
Yeah.
because to me that doesn't make sense. Why would he be an out and out bad guy?
Yeah.
He would be a good guy that something bad happened to him, and so now he struggles.
Yeah. And
with
again, it's trauma.
exactly right. So I wanted the idea that there's a sense of nightmarish kind of like imprisonment, that he's trapped in something that this is not nice for him. He's not having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And the other image that I just had up here, this one here. So another Grant Morrison thing going
Yeah.
on here. If,
Yeah.
Grant nods.
I believe it's his Batman and Robin run.
It was,
Yeah.
Flamingo.
Yeah. Don't see him often.
No. Well, it was just like, I mean, I don't want to spoil who's going to be in the whole thing. I mean, I remember when I tweeted about what I was doing, people would tweet at me and go, I hope so and so's in it. I hope so and so's in it. I hope this guy's in it. And I was just like, well, I'm not saying a word. I know who's in it. There is two kind of, I had two kind of things that I would consider about whether a character of one of his rogues was going to be in it. One, how much do I love that character? Even if it was just a fleeting thing, who do I want to pay homage to, creator wise? But also, like, a lot of the characters have to fit in the story. I can't just whack someone in, they have to fit. There has to be a reason why they're there and what they bring to the story. What are they facilitating? But Flamingo, he was just, I mean, you'll see in issue 2 what his deal is, but it was just too fun not to have him in. And I've played with the character quite a bit. He's a slightly different character than what he was in Batman and Robin. But just pink. I mean, Batman needs a bit more camp every now and again. So I was just like, I want to do a bit of camp.
And somehow all of these imagery, all of the imagery for not only within the book, but all of the stuff from just the promo images, there are a lot of different aesthetics, but they all are representative of the work somehow, from the cover art to, the pieces like this one here. If for anyone who's just on the audio version, this is the green bat head with the tentacle face, the Cthulhu, the Batman Squidward, Zoid, the Batman, the Bat Zoidberg head. All of this, as different as they are from each other, they're all so accurately representative of the aesthetic and the feel of the final product.
Thank you.
And we can't say enough good things about it, but
thanks so much.
we have remained pretty much spoiler free here. So
Mhm.
we're going to put a little pin in it here because we will have a separate episode with Christian where we go full spoilers. That will be when the book is on shelves. You'll be able to hear that episode. We're going to use, some magic of time travel and make that one happen. But before we put a pin in this one, where we're going to leave it up until FOC is coming up, is there anything that you want to tell people about this book?
If you love Batman, I think you'll find something in this that you love. If you, like me, you grew up with Arkham Asylum meaning something to you, you're going to love this book. I've put everything into it, as I've said. But other than that, I would say FOC is on September 10th. It's hard out there for comic shops at the moment. Every comic that they have to order is a gamble. It's stock that's going to sit on their shelves that's not going to make them money when they need to make money. If you want this book, I would plead with people to just let your comic store know so they know how many to order.
Yeah, let them know. So FOC, for people who don't speak our language, FOC is the Final Order Cutoff. That is the date that your shop needs to know by then that you want a copy of it. Don't let your shop be surprised when, they think they needed maybe about 30 copies of this when in fact they needed like 65 copies of it. Don't leave it to chance. Just let them know that you're into it. September 10th is that Final Order Cutoff. October 10th is the release date of the first issue.
And it will sell out.
It probably will. We're going to be waiting for that second print cover. I can't wait to see a second print cover.
I know. I'm going to have to start thinking what it's going to
be. Yeah. But we're going to put a pin in it right there. So Batman, City of Madness, Christian Ward, October 10th, Final Order Cutoff, September 10th. Thank you, Christian, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we will see you next time. This is Bat Force Radio. Have a good night.